Yo, yo, yo. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to VUX World. I'm your host, as always, Kane Sims, having a bit of trouble with the old musical intro there, but live and kicking. Here we go. I'd like to give a shout out to Deepgram before we do kick off this conversation, which is going to be an epic conversation with Jeroen, who is the product owner for Conversational AI at AMRO Bank. We're going to be talking all about AMRO Bank. It's one of the Netherlands' largest banks. They handle in 1.5 million conversations per year. And we're going to be talking all about conversational AI maturity as you begin to scale solutions across the enterprise. We'll get into that in just one moment. But first, shout out to Deepgram if you are looking for speech recognition services to power your voice bots or even use cases beyond voice assistants, things like call recordings, things like meeting transcripts, all that kind of stuff. Speech recognition has a huge role to play across the enterprise. So if you are looking for speech recognition solutions, do check out deepgram.com /VUX world. They've got immense accuracy, they've got incredibly fast speed, and they are incredibly cost effective. One of the things that Deepgram believe, which I also believe as well, is that there is no such thing as a generic speech recognition model. Every speech recognition model should be tailored for the use case that it's used for. And that means you're going to get the best accuracy if you do that. If you have custom acoustic models and you have retrained speech recognition models based on your customer dialect, language, vocabulary, and accuracy, which means you're feeding more accurate data into your NLU, which means better performing assistance and better customer experience. So go to deepgram.com /VUX world if you want to learn more. That's deepgram.com /VUX world. All right. Now, without further ado, let's welcome today's guest, Jeroen. Jeroen, welcome to VUX World.
Thank you, Kane, and thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you for joining us. A lot of interesting things happening in the conversational AI space in the Netherlands, so you must be enjoying things over there.
Yeah, definitely. It's like it's one big kindergarten in terms of enjoying, experimenting, and doing new stuff. That's what me and my teams really like. So that's really good.
Nice. So I first come across you when it was only a few months back when you were speaking at the Chatbot Summit in Edinburgh, and it was a European Chatbot Summit, I think it was, and you were on a panel with a bunch of other kind of banks. I think Monzo was on there, a couple of others. And what was really resonating, which I think is a topical conversation, certainly for me at the moment, was this concept of maturity and developing a mature AI team, developing organizational maturity as far as leadership knowledge and education and support and all that kind of stuff is concerned. You were talking some real sense about that kind of stuff. So I can't wait to get into that conversation. But first, before we do, please do tell us a little bit about yourself, Jeroen, and what you do at AMRO Bank.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Jeroen. I'm 35 years old. I work at ABN AMRO for almost 10 years already. But since 2017, we're working. I work as a product owner, conversational AI. That was also back in the days, right, when we really started. So we made a small POC. We put it live, see how it works, and also how our customers are dealing with a chatbot. Get the first learnings from that, and also start learning. Okay, does this technology have the potential to grow into something big? Well, that's since 2017, and over time, together with a great team, we grew quite significantly. So from a chatbot POC to the first chatbot on specific topics, over and over again to an enterprise-wide conversational AI platform, from which we currently operate multiple chatbots for customers as well as for our colleagues. And we have a great team of over 40 people working on it.
Wow, 40 people, that's quite a lot. When did you start, did you say?
Sorry?
When did you start the initiative? When was the POC?
Late 2017. Yeah,
Okay.
second half. So September, October, something like that, we started.
Interesting. So you got to 40 people in just less than 5 years, maybe.
Yeah, that's true. But if you look to the adaptation of the technology, and what the need is for digital contacts or contact online, it's quite a natural growth as well. We always grew against the demand and not so much by pushing. So that's quite interesting.
Yeah, interesting. So where does your sort of your interest in this stuff come from then? Where was your what got you interested initially in conversational AI?
Well, in general, I really like topics with regards to basically changing digital offerings we do to our customers. So really turning something upside down and changing the organization or changing the way we offer our products or we communicate with our customers. That kind of disruptive technologies always drew my interest. And from basically via colleagues who were interested in technology, basically my interest grew in the technology as well. And in 2017, the opportunity raised to actually take the position of product owner over this technology. So that was really excited, of course, and also to involve people who have the same eagerness in that sense what I did. So that's
Nice.
that's how I rolled in.
Nice. And so talk to us about this POC then. What did the POC sort of entail, and what was it that you were trying to learn from it originally back in the day?
Well, back in the day, the question was really out there. Is that we read a lot what happens on the other side of the large ocean, right? With regards to chatbots or digital assistants, that it was really taking place. And what we wanted to learn is on one side, hey, is the technology advanced enough to also to deal with the Dutch language? So that was also a big question mark at the time. But on the other hand, are customers okay with it, or can we offer it in such a way that customers actually like interacting with a chatbot instead of just calling us or chatting? Well, we didn't have chat at the time, but or coming to the office and actually interact with one of our advisors. And in that sense, we started with a small POC. It were like some off-the-shelf components or services we used. We put something together on subjects which we know customers were talking about. We published it online. It was quite rule-based. There was not really an NOU behind it or anything. And then, we took it from there. We just started seeing what was going on and what was in terms of the technology, but also in terms of what the customer wants from us and how did they like it.
Interesting. How did you kind of determine whether customers liked it? Because that's always a sort of, from the one side, the business cares about getting stuff done or whatever, deflecting calls, enabling transactions, whatever it might be. The customer kind of preference is always a tricky one. You got NPS, CSAT, those various things. Is that what you were using, or were you looking for something else to try and gauge whether people were actually liking this thing?
Yeah, well, these days it goes a bit broader. So these days it's not only about measuring, well, it's also about NPS and that kind of scores, right? But it's also about I think what is one of the core benefits of conversational AI is that basically what you enable yourself is that you can basically improve your bot data driven. So you basically get the real-time insights in what is going on in your bot. The customers go through your flow completely. You can read the conversations themselves as well. And basically, you can learn from that. Okay, how are our customers experiencing the interactions with Anna? And also in terms of, is Anna able? Anna is our chatbot for the listeners, by the way. So that's our main digital assistant. Are the customers, are they able to get stuff done via Anna, or do they need a handover or not, or do they just simply give up and drop out? All these kind of metrics we are measuring within the bot, and that's basically how we can determine, okay, Anna is of good use for our customers or not, or we need to change something. And that's actually all input what you just gather for the next sprint, basically, and put it on there. Yeah, and but if you look from the start to it, I know when we started back in the days, then you talked about 100, 200 conversations a week, right? So it was really small, really a small POC, small scale and everything. And then you were going through the logs yourself, and then you immediately saw is that if you want to do this right, you should do it big. Don't keep it small. Don't go for straightforward technology to use this, because the customer expectation for your digital assistant or a chatbot is huge. So you just can't get away with a few simple flows, clickable flows, and because it's experienced really quick at something that you want to avoid contact with your customer, basically, and that you put a simple bot in front of it. So what we saw, yes, there is a lot of potential in implementing digital assistants, but you should go big if you want to do it correctly.
Interesting. Why Anna, out of interest?
Why Anna is called Anna?
Yeah, why is it called Anna? Yeah.
Yeah, we did some customer customer interviews at the start of the journey. So and also put out some questionnaires, and that was a wide range of different avatars, different names, combinations. How do you feel in relationship to the bank with it? So what is the tone of voice of the bank is also, of course, an important one, because you want to have over your channels. you should implement. It's important that Anna has a personality, but it should be relatable to the brand you are, of course. So there are different aspects we tested on, and Anna in combination with the avatar we use her and the personality behind it. It came out to test most favorable. That's
Interesting.
when we went for it.
And there's an avatar as well, then, is there?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Ah,
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Interesting. Was that part of the POC as well, the avatar, or did that come later?
No, it was part of the POC as well already. Yeah, we did it in advance. Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. Was that a kind of conscious choice, or was that part of the platform that you decided to go with at the time had, an avatar capability? Like, was the avatar a conscious choice?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, so we actually had a specialist for that. So who did the whole investigation, and UX specialist who did all the investigation and the research together with our customers and stuff like that to come up with it. Even the designs actually. So we tested the whole wide range of avatars. So it can be human-like, robot-like, or not even relatable to a human or a robot. And and these were basically the results. So yeah. It was quite surprising, but people went for a familiar face, sort of. So a human face, yeah.
Interesting.
A bit cartoonish, of course, but yeah.
Yeah. And do you think, did you measure, or have you done any research as far as the role that having an avatar plays versus not having an avatar, or not?
Well, it was quite straightforward already that, I think it's fair to say that we went for something recognizable, also because we didn't want to sort of trick the customer or get the customer in confusion if he or she was talking with a real agent or not. So our avatar is human-like, but it's also pretty cartoonish. So it's pretty clear that it's a chatbot and not actually an agent talking with them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was quite fast decided that we wanted to go for something recognizable.
Yeah. Interesting. So the beginning point sounds very much similar to how most organizations would progress. You begin with a proof of concept. You've got some ideas about, is this actually going to do what it says it can do? Our customers going to actually like it? All that kind of stuff. You deliver the proof of concept, and you spoke about how you got kind of customer feedback and stuff like that. Was there any particular kind of business metrics that you were looking for when you initially launched that POC? Like, what were you using to measure the success of the POC?
Yeah, the success of the POC was really like, okay, does the technology work, that kind of stuff. But I think from a broader perspective, I mean, where did most corporates start as well? I think in that terms, it was all about automating customer contact with the customer. And it was basically driven from the inside that a lot of interactions we have with our customers are, well, the conversations might be complex, but the solutions are, for a large share, are pretty straightforward, pretty easy even. So yeah, the whole organization started to work starting to get behind the chatbot from basically a cost-reducing perspective. And a standardizing perspective, also from agent happiness, because the philosophy was also a bit, you can answer the same question 20 times a day, or do you really want to dive into the more complex stuff, right? People get more happy from the more complex stuff. So it was a bit taken from those two angles, but that evolved over the years. Then we really talk about the vision in 2017 to 18, something like that. But along the way, you saw that transforming as long we knew more, we were available through more channels, we tried different concepts. And then the whole vision and the idea, also from the organizational, especially from the organizational perspective, transformed as well, because you see more and more value. You identify more and more value along the way. So that is really, that's really a nice journey to take. Stressful, but a nice journey. Yeah.
Interesting. So what was the next steps beyond the POC then? How did you, because you mentioned there you realized in the POC that if you want to do it properly, you've got to pretty much go big. What was the sort of like strategy from the POC to getting something into production? What was that kind of journey like?
Well, what we quite early identified is that customers are not really, from a generic perspective, if the customers hit the chat button and start to chat, it can, I won't disclose any surprising stuff here, but they talk about anything related to the bank, anything. And if you have a very simple rule-based chatbot, then that's not going to help if you have just a couple of subjects in. And even worse, for sort of perspective, the customer can jump between subjects as well. So you need quite a complex solution behind it and a scalable solution behind it to get stuff done. Also, I'm not sure, but it's quite normal. A bank has a pretty wide audience. Basically, everyone needs a bank account. So if you're a company, if you are rich, if you're poor, whoever, if you are living somewhere backward or you're living in the downtown New York, you need a bank account. You need to have a relationship with the bank. So the audience and the target groups of the banks are really widespread. That also means that on one side, and if you want to build a virtual assistant, which is at least usable for the main account of your audiences, then you have to go really, really wide. And that's also when we saw, okay, so from a technology perspective, you need to go for the more advanced NLU kinds of capabilities, but also from an organizational perspective, you really need a lot of people widespread from the organization tapping into your technology or start talking with them and together with them building your virtual assistants to actually make your virtual assistant really applicable for all these different target groups to talk about all these different subjects. So that was that was actually a journey of over. Well, it's still a journey, but it's already been a journey for over 4 years now.
Mm.
And that's quite interesting. And to give you one insight, I think the biggest mistake you can make as a starting team is to think, well, you can build it yourself. You can if you're you start on a small scale, right? So your world is pretty small, it's pretty straightforward. You have a solution, you build it, you have 1 or 2 stakeholders. You take into account what they want, you take into account what your customers want, and you expand your bots gradually. But what you really see is that with your there is so much knowledge needed to include in an efficient digital assistant for your bank, is that you also need to think about, okay, how do you get all those people along from all those different product groups? You have to talk about mortgages, investments, your bank account, name them, insurances, name them, and you have it. That it becomes a really widespread initiative.
Mm.
And also what I think is that because the banks in general are so large, it also means that a lot of knowledge is also available in the organization, right? So are we as developers, are we as data engineers, are we as UXers, experts in having a conversation with a customer? Or are that those people in the contact centers or in the branches, etc.? And a lot of stuff to consider.
Absolutely, yeah. So if people are listening to this thinking, go big, go kind of like, not necessarily go big or go home, but the learnings from the POC was it's big. You know, you've got lots of different types of customers with lots of different varying needs, and a lot of chatbots that begin with one use case, you could argue that potentially they disappoint a lot of people, because if you're only covering for 20% of your use cases, then 80% potentially of your customers are being let down. But at the same time, thinking about, okay, well, we've tried this technology. It's keyword based or rules based, rather. We don't have any natural language understanding. And at the same time, one, we need to get our head around natural language understanding capabilities. And then two, we also need to go across the whole organization and begin to then compile content, format content, rewrite content, get it into an accessible place, get it all signed off across all those different divisions that you mentioned. Might seem a little bit daunting. What advice would you give for others who are hearing this and thinking that sounds massive? Like, where do you start with that?
Well, I think you can. Start. During the POC and during the first year, we started as a single team, right? But what you should identify for yourself are the stakeholders within the organization. Maybe it are even the people you are talking to. You're trying to sell your digital assistant to. You need to get them on your side as well. And I think, and in my experience, if you look to the stakeholders you talk to that are regularly the contact center, maybe people from the branches whatsoever, they have so many knowledge on how on the actual customer and how to deal or to talk with the customer. Basically, get them on board. Also, get their knowledge in. Maybe even get them working on the conversations of your digital assistant themselves, because the experts in your organization who know how to deal with the customer are your people behind the telephones, behind the desk in the branches, and that kind of stuff. So my advice would also be is that if you build a digital assistant first place to support your contact center, for example, is that also to get those people in and look with them to the information you get in your chatbot in terms of, okay, what does the customer need? What are they asking and anything? And start developing the dialogues together with them and also guide them and train them and how to do it and stuff like that. And grow together with them. So don't do it alone.
Absolutely. How would you define maturity as far as kind of like conversational AI is concerned? You've started with a very small team, seemingly in the POC. You've grown quite organically as you've covered more content, more use cases across different areas of the bank. There's now 40 people working within that team. What are some of the elements that you think constitute maturity as far as this is concerned? What are some of the things that you do now that you think are kind of like representative of a mature team that perhaps weren't there before?
Well, what I do think, what is representing a mature team, first of all, I think it's very important. One of the main constraints I think in the current market is that there is a lot of knowledge on how to do this right, but the knowledge is with a very select group of people. If everyone wants to do it very big, basically, or wants to upscale to a team size what we currently have, it's very hard to get those people out of the market. And what I think you also need people out the market. You need specialists in, but you also need specialists from within your organization itself. So I think so first of all, I think you should get a healthy mix of people who know everything about the bank and about the customer, together with really the people who know everything about the technology and how to deal with it. And you sort of have to get them together and also have to get them to work together. And that can be a major, major challenge because, not speaking what I sometimes hear in the market as well, put some back-enders, data engineers, and conversational designers in one room and get them to speak the same language and also that we know from each other, okay, what is the value from each other? So what do we each bring to the table? That can be very complex. So if you have a combined team, which from those different specialists who actually understand each other and pay time to each other and actually can suggest maybe even improvements towards each other because they understand each other's world, I think that are really good signals that you really have a mature team. So it's all about a mix of knowledge and a mix of experience, bring it together and getting it to work together.
Interesting. It's really interesting, that concept of having people that are part of the business versus, or as well as people that know about the technology, because there's been times in the past, in the distant past, where I've been working on things without really the business context, or you'll hit if you're starting from scratch, you won't be able to start, basically.
Yeah.
And then at some point you'll hit a wall where you're not really sure whether what you're actually saying as part of the conversation is even true. And then you've got long times before you can get it in front of someone for them to have a look at it. And then depending on how big the system is, it can take quite a while for people to actually get through various stages of the experience to get to the point that you need to pay attention to. And then how do you document feedback and deliver feedback and stuff? So I can see how having a team that's made up of people with the knowledge of the business versus as well as the knowledge of the technology working collaboratively together can really expedite kind of timescales, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's essential to be on the same boat, right? But not only from the team itself, but also from a organizational perspective. I mean, if your e-commerce departments or your contact center departments or any other, maybe some kind of product team department is not on board, doesn't share the purpose and doesn't share the goals you try to achieve, that becomes very hard to build a sustainable assistant for your organization. And I think that is also key, that there is a certain understanding that everyone needs to contribute to the digital assistant in order to make it work. And indeed, like someone like a copywriter from e-commerce reads customer feedback differently than someone from the contact center or a data engineer or such of, and that Yeah, and you need to get all those insights. You need to get them together and sort of come with a coherent plan in how to improve your digital assistant. So yeah, it's quite important. It's essential in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah. And is that driven from a kind of real senior level or more of a grassroots movement? So I've been in organizations before where the collaboration between teams it's almost like a bargaining is as such, where this team's over here, they're doing their thing and they're really busy and under pressure. This
Yeah.
team's over here doing their thing, they're really busy under pressure. And then the transformation team, as it was then called, is kind of in the middle, trying to buy a bit of time from here, trying to get a bit of back time from there, and trying to kind of do things in and around business as usual without it being like a dedicated project team where people can come out of the business to work on something. And so I've worked in both instances where, in that case, it's kind of grassroots driven. It's all about building relationships internally and trying to get support internally. But
Yeah.
also, I've been on the reverse of it, which is actually been driven by the senior stakeholders and board members and whatnot, who've kind of like, or the VPs who've been like, this team and that team need to work together on this project for this period because this is really important. In your experience, what have you found works more effective, or is it a combination?
Oh, it was absolutely a combination. If you only have your grassroots movement, how you call it, but you don't have support from senior management, or they don't see how it contributes to the vision they have for the customers and for the organization, it's not going to fly. And because it is, let's be honest, it can be a quite expensive project to deploy as well, right? It's not something you can do out of the change money from your annual budgets or something. There has to be really dedication to it and understanding why we are doing such things. But on the other hand, without collaboration in the teams, you basically run into the problems you just mentioned, right? So teams or different specialists have different goals. People might do it on the side instead of dedicated and that kind of stuff. Yeah, and then you don't get the potential out of the technology you want to get from it. So yeah, and especially the customer, because the customer is rightfully quite easy in declining a specific channel if it doesn't help them directly. So it is a need that comes from both ways. And I think what the strong point is of conversational AI in that sense is that the customer talks with you in plain language, and you can capture that language and you can analyze it also on a larger scale. So you know very specifically where you need to improve, where you need to change. And I think that's for compared to other digital capabilities companies regularly offer online. I think that's one of the main strength points. Customers can talk to you in plain language, what they think is good, what they think is bad, or you can easily subtract it from the conversation and use this very valuable input for your assistant, or maybe also the other capabilities.
Interesting. One of the things that's also a kind of, I suppose, a signifier of maturity, both from the kind of like technology capability perspective and also from the culture teamwork perspective, is taking that spoken language that you mentioned, being able to analyze that at scale, as you mentioned, but also taking relevant kind of insights and being able to offer that to other parts of the business. So there's a really good example of Comwave, which is a Canadian telco. I use this story all the time because it's really interesting, where they had customers call in their IVR, and the bot that was in the IVR is intended just to raise support tickets. If your modem or router goes down or you lose your internet, whatever, raise a support ticket, someone will get in touch with you later. But what it noticed is that from this very specific place in Canada, one town, we're getting loads of reports of outages. And that, because they had the setup internally, was able to be flagged to the support division of the business that then actually found out that the internet was down in a certain part of town. So the insight coming from the bot was able to inform the business of an issue that it didn't know about, that
Yeah.
it then went and resolved. So I'm just wondering whether is that kind of the situation at AMRO Bank, and how else do you use that data over and above kind of improving models, if anywhere?
Yeah, well, not so maybe not really directly linked to the example you've put on, but for example, it can also mean that you communicate on a lot of different ways with your customer, right? You can even send letters. You have a website, you have the app, you have your main contact channels, that kind of stuff. And sometimes it can be the case that sometimes that you see that you get a request from a specific place on the web of the app a lot of times about a specific product. which is a relatively quite. In our example, we had 3 years. We had an example. So, for example, our customers were asking a lot. You have in the Netherlands, you have a payment system which is called Ideal, and a lot of questions came in about can I retrieve? I'm not sure what the English word is, but can I retrieve the money I just sent via Ideal myself?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, as a product manager or as a copywriter, you write a lot of stuff down about specific products or about specific topics, which a product actually can do, or which a product can mean for a customer, but not really what you can't, right? But that doesn't mean that there are no questions about it, but at the customer side. So in that sense, sort of observing and seeing what is going on in the customer's mind in terms of, okay, what questions do they have about a product, can also help you basically to optimize content or information elsewhere. And I think that's a generic example how you can use it.
Interesting. So in order for those kind of teams that have the resources to be able to do things like that regularly, which you should do absolutely. If you've got any chatbot live, this should be a thing that you do routinely. But you've got a lot of different skills that are needed to do this. Your POC, if you look at the team that you have now versus the POC, I imagine you've got roles that exist in your team currently that probably might not have even been thought about in the POC. If you're working with lots of different divisions across the bank and they've got content and data in different places, you need somebody or team to be able to bring that data together, create relationships between it, make it accessible to be called by a chatbot and all that kind of stuff. You've got some kind of like data science requirement there.
Mm-hmm.
You've got someone who understands NLU systems. If the
Yep.
POC was kind of like rule-based and the recent addition is natural language understanding, you need someone to be able to know what to look for in those transcripts. You need someone to be able to maintain the integrity of your NLU models as you kind of retrain it for specific use cases. So I'm wondering if you can talk about, you don't have to give us the, role for role your team makeup, but some of the key skills that teams, as they begin to mature, will absolutely need in their team that they might not have thought about when they were just beginning.
Yeah, I think. I think machine learning and NLU applications in general that are quite generic applications, right? I mean, you could do a whole wide range of stuff with it, and I think just building the experience and gaining the experience how to utilize it right in terms of a conversation and in terms of implementing the actual flows, the notes basically, and link the notes and make jumps in the notes, etc., like that. Yeah, that's a professional in itself, and I don't think it's something you learn on the university, basically, or not necessarily. So that's really something you have to gain by experience, and I really think that's something to find those people, and otherwise to find those people who are interested to learn this. That is, I think, the key question there. People pick it up quite rapidly, I noticed, if you deal with if you have the right systems in place, of course. So I think that's quite important. But what another major insight is that designing conversations is actually a professional in itself. So actually, you can't pull people from the contact center, drop them behind the laptop, and having them write conversations on one side, and on the other side, get a few content specialists who write for 10, 15 years already write content for a website or whatever. And do the same with them. It's really a professional in itself, because the dynamic of a conversation is completely different than it is if you just publish content on the website or in an email or whatsoever. And understanding that dynamic and also realizing what the problem is behind the questions the customer asks, so you can offer a solution more rapidly than instead of asking a few additional questions in your flow as well. That is really key, and getting that getting the knowledge from those two sides, getting it combined. So know how to write content, know how to have a conversation with the customer, combining that technology combining that knowledge, that really got together to that to our realization that a conversation designer is a professional in itself, and it's not something you can do on the side or something like that. So. And that was quite a lengthy journey, right? Because you have to gain the knowledge as well, how to do it as well, by yourself, also with some external support. But that's something which has to grow within your organization. And if you just mentioned, I just earlier mentioned, 40 people working on it. Well, I didn't count the conversation designers themselves in that. So we have quite a bunch of conversation designers in the bank, which you really have to educate and bring on the level you want to have them to make them really effective or really valuable for Anna in this case. And I think that's the major insight in terms of creating new professions. I think the conversation designer is something really something new. Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. It's really interesting because it's almost it's gotten to the point where it's becoming a recognized role. I imagine now if now compared to 2017, certainly it's more recognized now as a profession. But it's really interesting with conversation design because people come into conversation design from all kinds of different backgrounds, which is like, yes, some people might come from customer service or content writing or whatever it might be, but some people come from all kinds of different places. It's absolutely crazy the varied backgrounds that people have in it because it's a real discipline, like being able to craft dialogue, understand the nature and the flows of conversations, twists and turns, grounding and error recovery and that kind of stuff is it's not trivial necessarily, but it's something that I think a lot of people overlook. What do you think are some of the things that people overlook when it comes to senior leadership support? So in order to get from a POC to production, you need to be able to demonstrate that it's got potential
Yeah.
to meet business value, obviously.
Yeah.
But in order to go from production for one thing and to scale that across the whole organization, all departments from mortgages to insurance to loans, the whole kind of bank accounts, the whole 9 yards, it requires definitely, as you mentioned, senior leadership plus maybe some grassroots stuff. But looking back now, what would you say some of the things, some of the like maybe it's common misconceptions maybe that leadership have around this technology and ways in which you kind of approached educating and gathering kind of buy-in from senior leaders? But maybe it's first before we get into the hows, what are some of the, even not just at Amro Bank but generally from your observations, what are some of the kind of misconceptions that you think senior leadership has around this stuff sometimes?
Yeah, I think if you're not that closely involved in working with this technology, like look, we're coming from an age where you have a lot of software as a service kind of approaches, right? You deploy a piece of software in your organization and it works. And what people don't realize good enough, and what you really have to bring to their attention, is that the analogy used within the organization is that with building a digital assistant, you're basically raising a kid. So it's not something the kid is there and then the kid knows everything. It's really about the amount of time and effort it takes to actually for the team to understand the customer really well, so to come with the right dialogues. It is also that it's not that you deploy an NLU, you build a nice interface, you build a nice avatar, you call it Anna, you put it live, and there, the technology does it all. So. Or the AI does it all basically because it's AI, right? So it's really intelligent, it's hyper intelligent, it knows how to deal with customers, right? So bringing them along that whole journey from starting at scratch and to basically expanding dialogue for dialogue, topic for topic, skill to skill, to upscale it to a bot which in one hand is still learning and on the other hand is actually already delivering value. Because that's also one of the aspects, right? With conversational AI, it can only really learn once it's live to customers. That's the big way how to. That's the way to go if you want to scale it on the longer side. That understanding and realizing that it's not a software package you implement, basically. That's a dynamic which which takes time for people to grasp. And even if they say, yeah, I do understand it, you need to put a lot of data in, a lot of conversation, you need to learn a lot before your assistant is mature. I still experience that even if people are saying it in their unconsciousness, they still approach the whole process and dynamic still as a software package you're implementing. So that really takes time.
Yeah, interesting. It's really interesting that because I mean I've been involved in lots of conversations in the past where the expectation is that it's kind of this black box that you just turn on and then it kind of
Exactly.
works because everyone uses Amazon Alexa and Google Assistant and stuff like that, and it kind of we just talk to it and it works, doesn't it? So why
Yeah.
would this be any different? It's a totally different mental model to get your head around, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And of course, that kind of companies, they're delivering great stuff, but they don't necessarily show how many people are involved to get it as good as it is.
Yeah.
And the understanding that it's not a software package that you have generic buttons. It really needs to be tailor-made for your specific customer. You can't just take out the data model on our side, walk to I don't know, to ING or something, or maybe Vattenfall, larger energy company, implement it there, and it works fine. No, because it's a different company in a different sector, with maybe the same customers, but who have different problems and are approaching it differently. So you need to adjust your model on that. So you basically, it's for a lot of companies, it's really you build your assistant from scratch. And you basically with buying the algorithm, then that's step one or step zero, basically.
Interesting. So now then, beyond the POC into production, 4 years down the line, big team supporting it. There's support and buy-in from senior leadership. You've got people involved from all over the different parts of the organization. What kind of use cases do you cover now? You mentioned at the beginning that you were kind of covering a small number of use cases. It kind of advanced to be a lot more broader. Is it kind of like question and answers? Do you do any kind of like transactional kind of stuff? Like, what kind of use cases is Anna covering today?
Well, we are available also with relevant content for basically all customers. So businesses, our wealth management customers, our regular retail customers. So basically we cover it all. Even expats. So we have a sort of multilingual thing that is really nice. Well, that's what I really like, that it works as well.
Interesting.
And but also in terms of Anna provides already some services, so she can change your address or check your address once before we send something to you. There are multiple things Anna can do. So it's really service oriented. It's information oriented. And Anna can also, based on she also targets customer with specific messages. So we sort of have a sort of proactive concept in production as well.
Interesting.
For example, what a nice case. What one of the first cases was, what was actually one of, I think, the nicest cases as well, is that basically Anna notifies customers 3 months before their banking card expires that their banking cards are going to expire. And with Anna, the customers can check if their address is still correct, so we don't send the banking card to the wrong address once we send a new bank. That kind of stuff, So actually tackling a problem before something becomes a problem. So before we send the card to the wrong address and the customer is at the shopping mall trying to pay for their goods, basically, and the card doesn't work. That kind of problems, that kind of frictions you can tackle with sort of a proactive strategy in that. And we have multiple cases on that, which is really nice. Yeah, and it's all about accessibility, right? So multilingual, I think, is really a part of being accessible for all your customers. But also things in terms of the way you display yourself, or only the chat screen in the button, or are you like in a wide interface, that kind of concept. Yeah, we're doing all kinds of stuff in that sense. Kane, on my side,
beginner schoolboy error there. I had myself on mute. The proactive stuff is really interesting because it's where a load of value is. And a lot of organizations, I think that's a good sign of maturity as well, is that you're able to do proactive things. Because if you think about the amount of resources that it would take to do that thing that you just explained there, which is reach out to customers, tell them that the card's going to expire, but one's on the way, confirm that their address is the correct address, and then okay to then send a new card. Like, imagine how much time and effort it would take to send that as a letter in the post, or have someone actually make a phone call to confirm that, or even, what was I trying to say there? I've lost my train of thought. But yeah, basically, those two things would be very expensive to do. Whereas once you've built it in the chatbot, it exists forever, and there's just nothing but value afterwards.
Exactly, and it is also like building a digital assistant is also building sort of a relation of trust with your customers, right? So if you can do with your digital assistant this kind of cases, and the next time the customer comes to the website because, I don't know what goes on, they want a mortgage, or there's a specific problem they want to talk about with someone, and they see Anna popping up, who helped her greatly the last time, even proactively, then people also tend more to click on it and start talking with Anna instead of picking up the phone or ask for an employee directly, right? So it's also a huge trust gainer, I think. But also from a broader concept, right? As the bank, I think, as banking sector as a whole, we are sort of in also in a digital transformation, right? So I think the same happens in the UK. Small
Yeah, yeah,
assumption, but local branches
yeah,
are closing. Everything moves to the app or to the websites.
yeah.
And then one of the big gains of having a bank in every town and in every basically shopping street basically was always you would have a conversation sometimes with your customer, right? Which is not only about a specific problem or about a specific product where they were coming from, but also about well, how are you doing in general? Holiday plans or
Mm,
what are you saving for? Oh, you might think about moving places, that kind of stuff. So to bring that kind of that touch points and bring that kind of relationship, we also need to transfer it to our digital domains, right?
mm,
And I think in that sense, it's not only conversational AI, but I think conversational AI is an important component in this. But actually, to that the customer comes in, and that's basically, and I can also determine, okay, who is the right person for you to help on, and can she pick up those small hints that the customer wants more than just what they're talking about, and connecting them to the right people within the bank. I think that's can be a major value driver of conversational AI, and in the banking sector as a whole, I think. So
mm.
in that sense, I think yeah, I think it's really valuable to pursue personalization strategies online. But I think conversational AI is an essential part in this, and not only for banks actually. I think for everyone, for all digital companies.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, as companies begin to mature, you start to see. I mean, Capital One, I think, is a really good example in the US where their digital assistant Eno it's in the chat channel, it's on the app, it's in the call center, it's even as a shortcut on in a web browser that can facilitate secure payments. It's
Mhm.
also in email, so the proactive stuff you were talking about there from Anna, it kind of it's all email based, so you get an email about your card or whatever it might be, and so it's really this kind of like true omni-channel presence. And when you get to not even that level, but everything that you've been explaining so far around Anna being proactive as far as anticipating customer needs, being facilitative in terms of getting the customer to where it needs to where they need to be, understanding the needs of the customer to be able to build and create services and models that are able to deal with that kind of customer queries, helping to relieve tension and stress from customer service agents and lighten the load so they can focus on more complex needs, having an accessibility angle as well. There's all of this stuff isn't kind of like tactical, stuff. This is all real strategic value
Yeah.
organizationally. And so the AI front end, in order to get a good AI front end, first of all, we've spoke about a bit of it, which is that you need
Mhm.
to have your back end in order, API availability for line of business systems, data in the right kind of shape and formats and accessible for the bot. And so there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into it in order for it to get to that point where it is a strategic asset, I suppose. But I think a lot of organizations still, when they're immature, believe that a chatbot is a point solution and it's a tactical implementation and nothing beyond that. So how do you go about educating stakeholders as well as other people within the organization about the fact that this thing is a real strategic advantage and not simply a point solution for a specific customer service problem?
Oh, that's yeah, that's a long process. So it's yeah, I mean, it's not so, and I don't mean in the terms of that they are hard to get it, but it's the point is I think this technology can be transformational for the way we offer digital services to our customers, and that means that you have to basically go through a lot of facts set in stone, sort of, what are basic principles of how the organization works. So before you have that kind of thinking, you are able. I mean, everyone can. A lot of people can tell nice stories, right? A lot of people can make nice, flashy PowerPoint sheets with all kinds of facts, why it's transformational and why it has a benefit and that kind of stuff. But actually, to build a relationship with your organization and take them along step by step. Okay, for example, now we have a POC on payment subjects. We think it can be variable for mortgages as well. Till the step as, hey, we have a mature digital assistant in the chat channel, but why is it driving the app as a whole, for example? That whole process, that there are like multiple steps in between, and take it slow. Don't try to hit your home run straight away, right? So define for yourself the steps, and each time define a new step in your vision, what you have, what you think. If it's like driving your app, if it's chat only or if it's I don't know what you see now, a voice bot for telephony. You see it more and more coming up in the market. That kind of technology. Take them along step by step. Prove it a small use case. Okay, this can actually work. What is the value compared to the current system or the current interface you're currently offering them? And on the operational side, so there's where you so that's more on the operational side where you really show the value step by step where it's growing to, and also to take them along like on a strategical note, like, hey, if your contact moves digitally, so first that also means on a strategic level, people have to first realize, okay, you go from analog to digital context as well if you are in a digital transformation, right? And if your stakeholders are there, okay, what can it mean more? Is it only about automating your contact basically, or is it wider? Does it, for example, mean that in terms of doing your services online frictionless or effortless or whatever term you want to give to it, can conversational play a role in there, and why can it play a role in there? And should we start a POC? It's a process of years, and also good understandable because things are working, things are delivering value. So you're not going to stop that because someone with a funny name walks into your room and claims conversational AI is the new way to go, right? Yeah, it's a lengthy process, but yeah, and never give up, I guess. So be aware, be conscious. The first 20 times or 10 times you probably get a no, and then yeah, step by step.
Interesting. Yeah, but as you said, if you're constantly focused on business value, then it's a natural, gradual process, isn't it? Whereby you demonstrate some value. Then there is, the next step is identified. You deliver that bit, and you prove that this use case also delivers value. And so then it's like, okay, well, if this is delivering value, then maybe this will as well. And so over time, iteratively, you kind of build the capabilities and build the knowledge and maturity.
Yeah, and as well, think also experiment with a lot of stuff because don't be afraid that sometimes to kill a specific concept. So if something that doesn't work, yeah, well then accept the fact very quickly it just doesn't work this way. Because sometimes you see people just keep pushing it through. Well, maybe if you improve this or that or whatever, but the customers are just not adopting it. I think that's quite be open for failure, literally, and accept it as a fact and make sure you have a relationship with your stakeholders, which do not depend on that single experiment, right? And then you get a whole different kind of talk. I think that's important as well. Yeah.
Interesting.
And that's what I wanted to say. Sorry. I was losing my mind for a bit of what I want to say. But also be very open for ideas from your organization. So if you're don't think you know it all, right? So talk with the contact center agents, talk with the copywriters from the website and the app, talk with people who are there on the front, not working in the field you're working on, and try to set up something together and also to work concepts out based on their ideas and see if it works, right? I mean, people who build something, they love it. I mean, you love your kid as well automatically, right? So if you get something to production from one of your stakeholders and they see it working, it's also easier to adopt it and to build on that, right? So be open for all kinds of colleagues with ideas. Yeah.
Absolutely. Fantastic. That's really useful. Not necessarily thinking about Amro Bank, because you don't need to give away any secrets, but in terms of you, when you observe things like technology developments, things like different use cases that you see existing, and you think about the future of AI-powered customer experiences, I call it, what are some of the things that are kind of exciting you about, you can see Google with the Lambda and the large language models. You mentioned voice channels becoming pretty popular. There's a whole bunch of different things kind of emerging. What are some of the things that are exciting you about the future of this technology and these use cases?
Well, I think what might be an interesting development. I think what I start to hear people talking about. It's not. I haven't seen it concrete yet, but what might be very interesting, if the technology you use. So forget the fact about digital assistants, but the technology you use and how you apply it. It becomes part of a wider range of analytical and NLU-driven products, which are sort of managing and driving your contact center as a whole. So sort of intelligent contact center kind of concept, that kind of stuff. I think that's a very interesting field to explore. So you take it from basically you approach it from a 360 angle. So your customer relationship, right? So not only focused on your customers, but also actively support your agents real time with specific insights, or automate certain tasks for them, or gain insights for your workforce management, so they know how to plan in capacity better. All that kind of different concepts. So apply AI over your contact center wide, for example, can be a very interesting topic. What I see in the first experiments, it's not what we are doing, but I saw some first experiments in the healthcare field, especially, is also, I think, the concept of digital humans. I mean, it's not mature yet, but like a real-time 3D avatars, like how we are talking, that you have sort of like Anna in the screen as a third party or something like that. I think I've seen some digital humans with quite some decent emotional intelligence as well, so who can respond to your facial expressions. Where there might be a lot of potential in that as well. Maybe on the longer term, I think it's not there yet, but I mean, most of the interaction you have with the person is like, I would say it's physical, so it's based on facial expressions. I'm not sure what the English term is about that.
Yeah.
But if you can mimic that near real life through a digital human or something, I think the feeling of a customer, of feeling listened to and being looked at, you get a way better connection than just firing off some text lines to each other, right? So I think from a field perspective, from a customer relationship perspective, that could be a big gainer on the bit longer term.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really interesting. Yeah, I think you can see some examples of the kind of AI first contact centers becoming available. You know, if you looked at last year when Microsoft announced its call center capability alongside Dynamics 365, I think there was something like 15 features or 14 features, and about 9 or 10 of them were all natural language processing capabilities, from analytics to bot automations to all sorts. And then Google's collaboration with UJet, I don't know if you're familiar with UJet, but UJet have the best omni-channel capabilities that I think I've seen, and have been heavily embedded with Google CCAI in terms of its integration with Dialogflow and whatnot. And so the use cases that offers is pretty interesting. But I think that if you look at because the call center is basically all conversations, you can have automated routing in the IVR that takes you to the right type of team, right skill sets. For the right use cases, automation in the IVR itself. And then when voice biometrics in there as well, which we don't see much of at the moment. And the same thing can be said in chat as well. This exact same process can work in chat. And then you've got conversational intelligence running in the conversations themselves, something like Symbol AI or Observe AI, something like that, extracting, from the live conversations that agents have, conversational intelligence from that. There's things around agent assist where you can be, automating transactions and giving agents next best actions and that kind of stuff. And so the potential for NLP across all these customer service channels is absolutely huge. It's frightening.
Yeah, but that's I definitely see the potential too. But on the other side, it's not that strange. I mean, if you can understand the language of a person, I mean, that's from an automated solution perspective. You could do a whole lot to interpret it in so many ways and set out so many actions afterwards. Yeah, I personally believe, so that's outside the bank. I personally believe this is really this can be really a transformational kind of technology, which is also easy deployable over different channels, right? I mean, I'm not meaning only digital channels, but also maybe analog channels or So in that sense, I think it can be really transformational. From the easy perspective, if you have 10 different services in your app, then you need to offer 10 different interfaces. And if you do it right conversationally, you only have one. And a customer just never have to search for it, gets an open screen, type something in the order, and just process right away. So only from that kind of perspective, I think it really has the potential to do something big in the upcoming years. Some companies are
Absolutely.
already doing it actually. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the digital humans, for those tuning in, if you're interested in the digital human side of things, check out the podcast we did a couple of weeks back with Rob Cunningham, who's an innovation manager at LNER, which is a railway service in the UK. They trialed one in a train station and got some pretty good feedback, to be honest. The limiting factor with actually rolling it out to production, I mean, the vision is that you would have a digital human everywhere throughout the train station so that at any point in time you need any help at all, you've always got somebody close. It's just the costs, basically. It's quite expensive to get a real good high fidelity digital human that has all of the things you mentioned. Being able to recognize when someone's gazing at you instead of activating a wake word, being able to marry together the dialogue and the actions and all this kind of stuff. It gets quite complicated, but yeah, potential is definitely there.
Yep.
Cool. Well, Jeroen, this was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. Really, really appreciate your time. It's been
Thank
absolutely
you as
amazing.
well.
Nice one. Thank you all for tuning in. Tomorrow we'll be speaking to Patricia Thane, who is the CEO of Private AI, and we'll be talking all about privacy in AI and natural language processing and how private AI is helping further the cause, which I think is a really important topic as well. So we'll give that some airtime. Shout out to Fico Hollander, who said, well said, Jeroen Das. I won't bring up the whole comment because it's quite large, but he's quoted your phrase of transformational technology, strategic for an organization and not just a point solution. It's a process of years demonstrating the value iteratively. Don't be afraid to experiment, be open for failure, and be very open for ideas from your organization. Couldn't have summarized the conversation better myself. Thank you, Fico. Appreciate that. And thank you, Jeroen, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers.